Welcome to the LTC Nimbleback Modding Guide. Let's jump right into it, but if at any point during the video you want to check out any of the stuff that I use to mod the Nimbleback, you can click right over there in the left corner, but let's jump into it. All right, right away for step one, you're gonna grab your LTC Nimbleback and you're gonna remove the skirt by gently pulling up. Now to change the entire color of the board on your desk, all you need to do is just paint this skirt. You don't actually need to paint the case. So to make the skirt ready to be painted, you're gonna grab a spray bottle and mix some water and a tiny bit of soap together. You're gonna get 400 grit sandpaper, and then you're basically gonna start wet sanding the skirt by spraying it with a little bit of your mixture. Then you're gonna be using that 400 grit sandpaper to sand it down while spraying it every so often with that mixture. Then you're gonna run it under some water, clean it off, and then give it a good dry. Now let's move on to step two. Grab some painter's tape and we're gonna tape off the bottom inside to make sure that these little clips don't get painted on so that they can reattach perfectly. Otherwise, if you paint over them, they won't attach perfectly. It'll be a little bit bowed once you put it on there. So you're just gonna do it on the inside, as you can see like I'm doing here. Now, after this is done, attach it to a box or some cardboard or really whatever you're gonna use. Then go outside or get in a ventilated area because we're gonna spray on the first coat. Now I'm using this really cool metallic-y bronze color, but keep in mind, I'm using a paint and primer spray paint. So if you aren't using this, you're gonna need to first put on a coat of primer, and then you're gonna need to sand this, and then you're gonna start from what I'm doing and putting on that first coat. Now also, because it's so cold outside right now, after spray painting, I'm bringing the box back inside and then again putting it back outside to do the second coat. Now I just did 2 coats, though you may need some more. However, this all depends on how heavy you put it on. Moving on to step 3, set aside your drying skirt and let's get right into taking those keycaps off. Now here, I literally just use my fingers and hands to pull the keycaps off because I can with the LTC Nimbleback, so I definitely recommend doing that as it's super fast. Then after we have this done, you're gonna pull those switches off. You're not gonna be able to use your hands here. You are gonna need a switch puller. So get ahead and take all those switches out. Moving on to step 4, unscrew the 6 screws on the top of the board, then gently lift off the plate and PCB, making sure to be careful that there is a cable connecting the PCB to the USB-C port. Now after that's out, gently disconnect the wire from the PCB. There will also be a single screw holding in the ports into the case. You're gonna go ahead and unscrew this and remove the ports and take them out of the case. Moving on to step 5, case dampening. Now you can use foam, rug gripper, rubber, really whatever you want. However, I am going to be using silicone. So we're gonna make a silicone mold of the case. Now it sounds a lot harder than it actually is. It's pretty easy. First, what we're gonna do is tape off the ports and anywhere that the silicone would leak from. Now I made a huge mistake while doing this, not noticing that where the flip-up risers are, there are little holes, and it leaked out and it was a kind of big mess. So make sure to cover those as well as the ports. Then you're gonna grab your part A and part B silicone mixtures and pour in equal parts into a cup. We're then going to stir this together for 5 minutes. Yes, you do have to stir it together for 5 minutes. It's kind of annoying. Step 6 is to level your board and pour the silicone. Now because this board is slanted, we actually need to level it before we pour in the silicone so that the silicone dries flat. Now you can do this with this specific case using 1 piece of cardboard to prop up the front end. So I just cut a little bit of cardboard and use that just on the front end to prop it up. Then the fun part, pour in your silicone. It'll spread while settling, so don't worry too much about that. Now I did not make enough, so I had to quickly stir together some more and pour some more in. So do keep in mind, this case is actually fairly deep and it doesn't really look deep until you start pouring in there. Also keep your eyes on the left and the right side of the case, kind of where that PCB sits down into, because you don't want it to be higher than that. Otherwise you won't be able to set your PCB back into the case. Now step 7 is to set your case aside while drying with that silicone and grab your PCB and plate, flip it over, and then unscrew the screws on the back. Technically, you don't need to unscrew it, but I like to. Then we're gonna take off the stock stabilizers by pressing in the pins while also pulling up or pushing from the bottom. We are gonna be replacing these with some Asceny plate-mounted stabilizers that I absolutely love. Moving on to step 8, we're gonna mod these stabs. So empty your stabilizers and separate them into stems, housing, and wires. Now we are going to Holy mod them. Now these Asceny plate-mounted stabilizers are actually designed to be Holy modded, and when they are, they sound absolutely amazing. They also feel really good. So grab some medical tape. You can also use Band-Aids if you want, and we're gonna cut the strip of the width of the stem's hole. So you see the little stem's hole? We're gonna just cut it to that width, and the length is gonna be probably about ½ an inch. After you have a piece about this size, attach it to one end of your tweezer and insert it into the stabilizer into the side with one hole and the slanted hole. Then press this down on the slanted part once flush with this side. Then flip to the other side with 2 holes and stick down the flat part. We're then gonna cut the remaining tape with a small amount left over. And once done, we're gonna crease this leftover tape and stick it into that second hole just to make sure that nothing comes undone while these are on your board. Now moving on to step 9, we're gonna lube the stabilizers. Because we wholly modded, we are not going to be using dielectric grease here, but only Krytox 205 grade 0. So firstly, grab your housing and lube the 2 inner walls evenly until there is just a sheen. Then repeat this on the 2 left and right walls of the stem, but again, obviously, it's not an inner wall, it's an outer. After this, insert the stem with the side with 2 holes facing the opening of the stem. After this, we are ready to lube the wire. Grab the wire and very generously with this part, lube the end of the wire and also past that 90-degree point just a little bit. Then insert the wire into the housing and stem into the bottom hole of the stem at a 90-degree angle. Then turn sideways and snap the wire in. Repeat this for all of the stabilizers now. Step 10 is to reinstall the stabilizers. Do this the same way you took them out. Now, you will not need to band-aid mod these at all, as they are meant to be extremely tight in your board, as they are trying to be more like screw-in stabilizers. So yes, you will have to press them down a bit. That is normal. These are super tight in the board, and they're designed that way. These are honestly the best stabilizers for budget boards. They really take the board to the next level. Next, step 11, screw in your PCB and plate back together and grab your switches. I'm using Bingsu switches that are factory lube and actually very, very smooth. If your switches are not lubed, I highly recommend lubing them. This is pretty integral. And if you're gonna skip any of the steps, don't skip this one. Here's how you can quickly lube a switch super fast if you don't know how to. Use the timestamp below if you wanna skip it. First, you're gonna need a switch opener, and this is not a Kale, this is an MX style opener. You're just gonna place it on that switch opener, press down gently, and then pull your switch apart. Now there's gonna be the stem right here, the top housing, the spring, and then the bottom housing. First, what you're gonna do is get the stem, put a little bit of lube on one side, and then the other side, put some on the front, and then those sides, and kind of just blend it all together. Now, you can do this as scientifically as you want or not. The thing that you wanna do is just make sure that you have good consistency. After you have that done, we're gonna flip this over and we're gonna kind of swirl around the bottom right there. All right, now set that down, grab your bottom housing right here, and then we're gonna put a little dab on the left side and then some on the right rails right there. And we're gonna feather that in, make sure that you don't have any white spots. You don't want that in this. Once that's all feathered out, I do a little ring around there for the spring. And then we're gonna do these 2 little leaves right here, just like that. Then after that, you're gonna get your spring. And I'm gonna be quite generous with this. You're just gonna go around the base. This is okay if it's not feathered in. So you're gonna go around the outside as well as the inside. This will just get rid of any unnecessary paint. After you have that done, get your housing, put the spring in there, get your stem, place it on the spring, then get your top housing and just kind of put everything back together. And then, now, while putting in your switches, make sure to hold the back of your PCB and that hot swap socket, because no one likes resoldering and they could pop out if you don't hold the back. But moving on to step 12, we are going to be using these teeny little O-rings on the standoffs to give this board more of a similar feeling to a gasket mounted board. Now, the way that we're gonna do this is you're first gonna put your screws through the plate and hold them there with your screwdriver. While doing that, take an O-ring and place it on each screw and kind of just screw it onto that screw. This may take some time, but I think it's worth it. Moving on to step 13, your skirt should probably be done drying by now, and just look at that. This thing looks absolutely epic. Really happy with the way the paint turned out. Now, to set this aside and remove the tape from your case when your silicone has set fully. Then you're gonna find the spot where the ports go and you're gonna cut out a space for that ports with an X-Acto knife or a utility knife. This is quite easy to do as the silicone cuts very easily. After cutting that out, reinstall the ports and screw it down with that one screw. Now, step 14 is to grab your PCB and plate and reattach the wire. Then place your plate and PCB back into the case and screw it down with those 6 screws, making sure not to over tighten, as remember, we do have those O-rings mounted on there. And finally, step 15, put those keycaps on. I'm using Akko ASA profile keycaps that match the paint perfectly with an accented yellow or kind of a goldish color. Now, after all those keycaps are on, place your skirt back on the board and press down to click it into place, and there it is. Man, this thing turned out so well. The metallic color looks super good, especially in the light, and the keycaps match it absolutely perfectly. The Bingsu switches are super quiet and make this thing sound really, really good, especially that space bar because of those Asceny Stabilizers. Remember, if you want to check out any of the things that I use to mod this keyboard, click right over there in the left corner. But enough talk, take a listen to the before and after sound test.